Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this morning. My name is Alison Manners. I'm the Learning and Development and Delivery Lead for Flexibility Works. And we're here today to talk about flexible working and recruitment. And it might be that you're looking to create more flex in your workplaces, or perhaps you're an employability provider and you're looking to kind of influence people about recruitment and the link between flex. For those of you who don't know us, Flexibility Works is a social enterprise and we support employers to enhance their flexible working offer because the data really does show that flexibility is good for people, but it also brings many business benefits as well. And one of those is around recruitment. Alongside our consultancy and training services, we conduct research with Scottish employers, Scottish workers, and unemployed adults looking for work. And we're going to share some of that data with you today. We also work closely with the Scottish Government, advising on workplace policy. Just to say a little bit about the format for today, we've got an hour with you this morning. I'm going to start off by sharing a few slides which share some of that data that I've just mentioned. And then I'm going to be passing on to my colleague Jenny Legg, who is going to lead a discussion with our great panel of experts that we have today, Martin, Alison and Nicola, and Jenny will introduce them properly at the start of her section. And we'll obviously be focusing on that recruitment focus. Please do use the Q&A function. You'll see the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen and ask any questions. We will have a Q&A section after the panel discussion, but you can start putting the questions in at any time. We'll aim to wrap up by 11 o'clock. Just to let you know, we are recording the session. So if any of your colleagues were unable to attend this morning, then the video will be available on YouTube once it has been edited and ready for showing. Finally, just to say a little bit about the Fair Work Festival. It's very important to mention this webinar is part of the Scottish Government's Fair Work Festival, which is taking place. And please don't forget, flexible working is a really, really important part of Fair Work First. And if you are bidding for public sector work or contracts, you'll need to demonstrate that you offer more than the legal minimum around flexibility and that you're really offering good flexibility, and recruitment is part of that. So without further ado, I'm just going to start by sharing some of our data. If you can move to the next slide, please, Alana. So just to set the scene in terms of the context of flexible working, we know that from our research that about 67% of Scottish workers work flexibly. And when we talk about flexible working, we are talking about flexibility in all its forms. So we're not just talking about hybrid or remote working, we're talking about flexibility in frontline roles as well as in office or knowledge-based roles. We know that there is a lot of demand from those people who aren't working flexibly at all at the moment. So about 18% of workers who don't work flexibly currently would really like to. So in total, we know that there is strong demand for flex, and that for those who already have it or those who would like flex, it's sitting at about 85%. Probably not surprising, the uptake of flexible working or the ability to have flexible working is much higher in desk workers. So about 73% of desk workers work flexibly. compared to about 64% of frontline workers. So we know that there is a disparity. We also know there's a disparity when it comes to salary, and we know that the higher your earning potential, the more likely that you are to have flexible working. So there is an inequity there at the moment, and that's something that we would like to address. And we would like to see flexibility in all its forms in across different sectors across Scotland. If you could move on to the next slide, please, Alana. We also know that when job hunters are looking for work, that flexibility is the second most important factor in their job search. Pay is sitting there at number one, but we have found in some years that flexibility has also been the most important factor. But currently, it's sitting as the second most important factor. So, 4 in 10 workers are saying that flex is important in their job search. So it's really, really, really important that employers make it easy for potential employees to see that they have a good flex offering because it's something that is very, very important to people who are changing jobs. Thanks, Alana. If you'd like to just move on to our next slide. But it becomes particularly important when you are looking at people who are currently out of work. And then when you factor in people who are unemployed and who are also mothers, it becomes very, very important. So we know that 43% of unemployed mothers, that the single most important factor in their job search is flexibility. So it's trumping the pay issue. But overall, for unemployed adults, it's still 30% of unemployed adults say that flexibility is the single most important factor in their job search. Thank you, Alana. But what we do see is a disparity between what employers think they're doing and what is actually the reality of job adverts. So only 33% of adverts mention flexibility, whereas 73% of employers think they're mentioning flex. But the reality is that only a third of adverts actually mention flexibility. So there's definitely a missed opportunity here. Thank you, Alana. So this does impact on applications. A lot of people will not go any further with their job application if they see that flex has not been mentioned in the advert. And again, it becomes very, very important for particular demographics. So unemployed mothers, 59%, unemployed adults in generally, but for all workers, 20% of all workers will not continue with that application if flex is not clearly mentioned in the advert. Thank you, Alana. And it also impacts on people accepting a job. So when we ask people if they turned down a job because the role lacked the flex that they needed, again, 28% of unemployed adults have turned down a job because it lacked the flex that they need. And this is particularly key in the group, in the parent group. So we know that for unemployed parents, 33% of them have turned down a job when they've been offered a job because it lacks the flex. Because we know in reality that for particular groups, they just cannot work unless they have the flexibility. So it's not just a nice to have, it's an absolutely essential thing for them. Thank you, Alana. And it also impacts on people progressing in work so that we know that people feel stuck because they can't see the flex they need elsewhere. So people's careers are often stagnating. So you could be missing out on people that really want to progress their career if you're not obvious about your flex offering during the recruitment process. And if you could just move on, Alana. No, if you could just stop the slides now, that's great. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of the current context from our own research, from those groups of employers, workers, and people who are currently unemployed and looking for work. And hopefully that just sets the scene a little bit for our panel discussion. So I'm now just going to pass on to Jenny, my colleague, who is now going to welcome our panel and have a great discussion about recruitment and flex. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for that, Alison. Yeah, so my name's Jenny Legg. I'm Head of Communications here at Flexibility Works. And just to briefly introduce our speakers today, we've got Martin Glover, who is Chief People Officer at law firm Morton Fraser McRoberts. He's got 35 years experience in senior global HR roles and focuses on strategic initiatives that enhance employee engagement, foster diversity, and build a culture of continuous improvement. We've also got Alison McBride, who's a strategic people and change manager at West Dunbartonshire Council. And Alison says she loves her job, and it includes all sorts of parts of HR, including strategic projects, organisational development, digital transformation, and even health and safety. And then finally, we've got Nicola Watt, who is Head of People at hospitality chain Buzzworks Holdings. And Nicola has 20 years experience in HR and hospitality and works on projects that support business growth while also championing flexible working and engagement with staff. So thank you very much for joining us today. We've just seen obviously a few of those slides showing some of our data around flexible working in recruitment specifically. And I wondered if we can just perhaps start by talking a little bit about your workforces, what sorts of roles are people doing, and very kind of briefly to start with, what do you do around flexible working in recruitment? Martin, should we start with you? What's your workforce like, and what broadly do you do to talk about or include flexible working when you're recruiting new members of staff?
Thanks, Jenny, and kind of great to be here. I would say that flexible working is a deeply cultural part of our business, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So we have nearly 500 people, 2 offices, Edinburgh and Glasgow. We're a law firm. So essentially a professional services business, essentially a business that uses buildings or has traditionally used buildings to carry out its work. We have what we call a presumption of agile. That is our policy, right? There is no long policy document that details people's rights to what it is. So we just say right from the top, the tone from the top is we have a presumption of agile. And that comes really from, we'd started this work prior to COVID, but COVID really provided the accelerator for this as it did in so many businesses. And what we found was we're a business that charges every 6 minutes of their time to kind of clients. So we measure productivity. We know how productive our workforce is through our charging and our billing. And what we observed during that time was no reduction in our productivity, absolutely proven beyond all reasonable doubt, to use a kind of legal term, that productivity does not drop when people work from home. What that does need is a kind of increase in leadership skill and capability to deliver that, however, and we have been and are still on that journey. So we have a presumption of agile for all jobs now, except jobs like being a receptionist and being an office services assistant. So those are people who deliver the mail and sort out papers and that kind of thing. But these are the only 2 jobs inside our business that requires an office presence. And even there, the flexibility extends to, let's say, someone's needing a new washing machine or needs to take their dog to the vet. That cultural flexibility angle is okay, that's fine, you can have the time off and we'll get somebody else to cover you. So very deeply ingrained in who we are and how we deliver our business. You'll see that on our website. So we say we operate our business on an agile basis, reflecting the needs of our clients and our people. It's there, and we live that out in practice.
Okay. And when it comes to recruitment, if you're perhaps putting out a job advert, what if anything do you say in the advert?
There's a clear statement in the advert that says just what I've kind of said there, and we go further. We say we will agree a suitable office home working arrangement with all candidates, except in
Okay.
those two cases where that clearly can't be the case. We haven't worked out a way of having a kind of virtual receptionist. Yeah, that's a kind of speaking part, and that's a kind of needing to be present part. But except for those two jobs, that's what we do and that's what we say.
Okay, great, thank you. And Alison, if we come to you now, the council obviously has a very, very varied workforce. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about some of the roles that people do, and again, like how you approach flexible working in recruitment?
Yep, so we have approximately 6,000 employees, and they cover office-based. So we have our accountants, lawyers, HR, sitting mainly desk-based. We have our teachers, schools, janitorial, dining rooms, the catering side of that. We have graveyards, parks, roads, housing, you name it. So we've got the home carers getting into people's homes, social work. So a really wide and varied group of employees, all doing very different tasks. Of that 6,000, roughly about 74% actually stay in Western Bartonshire. So they're really invested in that area. They're staying locally. They want to improve things locally, and they want to deliver for their own community. So in the main, we don't want to lose them. So we're looking at really supportive policies and working practices that looks to keep our people because of that local investment in the area. So we're looking to develop policies and practices that bend and flex with people, I suppose, throughout their life, because you need different things at different points. And we're really focused on, I suppose, that's got to be around our service delivery. So it does look different depending on what role you're in. So we offer all different kinds of flexible working and all different kinds of supportive policies. So in our adverts, the main phrase that we will always put in our advert is that we have supported flexible working policies to help you achieve the work-life balance. And that's a very individual thing, and that's what we're hoping. We've always had day one access to all flexible working as well, and we just continue to look and build and learn and test and try where we can to support people to get the best out of them in order to get the best service to our residents and community.
Okay, and if someone's applying for one of those more frontline roles, and they see this kind of phrase in the advert, what sorts of things are people then asking for, or what sorts of things do you bring up in the interview? What does that look like in those frontline roles?
So there's all sorts of things in terms of the kind of flexibilities we use. We have remote working, we have hybrid working, we have split shifts, we have part-time working, we have compressed hours, we have split rotas, we have annualised hours, we have home start, where people leave immediately for their house into their roles. We have a whole host of things that we will look and bend and flex. We have small amount of hours per day up to full-time hours. There's not any fixed, it needs to be this amount of that amount of hours. We bend and flex as much as we can. And you'll see things like school crossing patrollers. They work very small amount of hours, but they're really invested in their local communities. They know those communities, but to ask them to increase hours or to move to another school would be dreadful for them. So it's about understanding the roles and the flexibility that can support that individual remain in their role and giving their best. So there's a whole host of things. So we would be asking them and having a discussion at that interview around what they can commit to, how they see that operating, how long do they see that in terms of planning as well, because what we find is people start and then want to change after that, and you've got to be able to, if you want to keep that employee, you need to be able to bend and flex and have that chat with them about what that maybe looks like moving forward. Because sometimes people need to reduce their hours, some people want to increase their hours. and it's about making sure we have the facility to do that when they need it, rather than creating any anxiety and stress around that. So being open to listening to your employees and having that suite of policies. Things as well that support, like study leave, parental leave, carers leave. We have guaranteed interviews for carers returning to work, whether that be children, whether that be elderly relatives. So trying to look and listen to what your employees are telling you would be helpful, and then looking to make sure you can accommodate that as best you can in your policies.
Okay, thank you. And Nicola, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your workforce and how you approach flexible working in recruitment?
Yeah, so I think Martin, the first thing he said, it's a cultural thing, and we really believe in that as well. It's, we have a kind of strapline in our recruitment that says it's about putting the people first, and finding ways to make our work fit around, your life. So at Buzzworks, I mean, we the word hospitality and flexibility doesn't always go together. And I think coming out of COVID, we went through quite a tough time and really had to kind of think about what it is we offer from a recruitment point of view. A lot of people were leaving the industry. At the same time, we grew. So coming out of COVID, we had 520 staff. We're up to about 740 at the moment. So not only retaining our workforce, but making it attractive from a recruitment point of view to join. Our roles are very diverse as well. Obviously, we're in hospitality, so it's, front of house, kitchen. We have people that are managers, leadership team, people that are in it for a career, a lot of part-time. So we employ a lot of students, whether that's at school, university, or so on. So our central support office, we have around 70 people in our central support office with all different functions, from marketing, finance, and graphic design, and people, and so on. So a real kind of mix between venues and central support. Probably, I think from a recruitment point of view, if we talk about our adverts and how we attract people in, yeah, we always talk about flexible working. In fact, it's always there kind of at the top of our adverts. And we use language like, talk to us about what this might look like for you. How does work fit around your life commitments? We tailor job adverts, highlighting some of the things that we do. I think Alison has spoken through quite a lot of really great things that probably we offer as well, but making sure that you're highlighting whether it's job shares or split shifts, all of these kind of things, depending on the role. 4-day weeks for her senior team as well, to try and retain, the kind of top level. And I think Alison said that, it's not just about getting the recruitment in, it's like retaining people as they go through their life journey. So things change within that journey. And I guess we spent quite a lot of time as well looking at our onboarding side of it as well, and making sure that once we had attracted people in, that they understood, what else we could do as these things change. So we talk in our onboarding around about flexible working requests, if things change, and how to go about that. Make sure that our policy for that is talked about quite a lot, and people know how to look at that and how it can support them. At onboarding, we also give everyone what we call a Love Life form, which is basically something that they can request regular time off. So that's on top of if they're come and they do set shifts, or they're just working school hours while their children are at school. They can also request time off if it's for clubs or volunteering or different things like that as well. So really beefing up the onboarding process so that they feel that flexibility all the way through. Attraction are obviously our job adverts, but also on our website, yeah, we have, we talk about what we offer. We talk about our training, learning and development. We actually have a section on flexible working so that people that can understand what that means to them. And even, you know, we mentioned things like for our young workforce that are sitting exams, doing work placements and things, we give time off for that, you know, 6-8 week period. So we talk about things like that through our website, our careers website.
Great. And Nicola, sticking with you just for a moment, that's all sounds wonderful, and it all sounds great for the people that are working for you. But some people might say, well, but from a business perspective, that sounds like you've got lots of different people working lots of different ways. That sounds like it's a bit of effort. Why is it worth the effort?
I think at the end of the day, when you recruit someone, Jenny, you want to find the right person. And if you find the right person, then, you know, you want to make it work. And we call it a jigsaw. And I think probably because of the nature of our industry, that's easier. You know, it's not 9 to 5, you know, during the week. You know, we operate Monday to Sunday, all day, every day. So if we find that right person, it's actually part of our recruitment training with our hiring managers, is that we call it a jigsaw. So how can we fit into that jigsaw? And I think probably just the nature of what we do, you know, people can work days, they can work nights, they can work day and night with a bit, you know, time off in between. And we have systems now that are built that all that availability is put in, you know, so from a rota and scheduling point of view, when our rotas go out 2 weeks in advance, that's all built into it. So from doing a rota point of view, it's not such an onerous task as it sounds.
Okay, thank you. And Martin, what about from your perspective? What are the benefits of being more open about flexible working when you're recruiting?
Well, what I can tell you is that the single most cited reason that new starts give us for wanting to join our business is culture. And what they talk about inside that is their approach to flexible working. And what's really interesting, what they'll say is because we operate in a very tight market, like my colleagues will on the call. So the war for talent is fierce. I felt some of that in what Nicola was saying just there. So if other organizations, if other law firms are not offering flex, then you're missing out. You're missing out on a trick, and you're missing out on talent. Our business is first and foremost a talent business, not a law firm. Everybody can do what we can do. Every other law firm does what we do. The difference is in our people. And so, really, as Nicola says there, it allows you to attract them in the first place, and it allows you to kind of retain talent, which is, absolutely crucial. In an industry where the war for talent is so absolutely tough. And people will say to us, I asked my previous law firm about working a bit more flexibly, let's say having every second Friday off, and they won't allow it. So now I'm on the market. I mean, that's an absolute steal for a place like us to pick up talented people from other firms who are just not willing to listen and not willing to bend and sway. I love that kind of phrase from Alison McBride on the call, and it is just that. It's just bending a little bit, so it allows you to attract and retain the very, very best talent. And we find we're able to pick up talent that we wouldn't ordinarily find through being flexible in our approach.
Okay, thank you. And Alison, what about you from the council's perspective? I mean, you must be recruiting hundreds of people every month, given the size of your workforce, which must be quite a big job. Does being more open about flexible working, does that reduce the amount of recruitment that you need to do if you get the right people and they stay longer? Or how does that work for the council as an employer?
I mean, we have certain roles where we're constantly recruiting. And that's just an ongoing. So anything that we have that can separate us from any other employee or employer in the area would be good. Working Life Scotland report recently had said that there is a growing disengagement in the public sector at the minute. We're finding things tough, funding's being cut, opportunities may not just be quite there as well in terms of progression. So when you start to, people are now starting to view some of these public sector roles as just a job, whereas before it was like it felt more an investment at times in your community. So when you're starting to lose that hearts stuff and that real kind of social part of the job, where you really have to look at your tool of offerings to get people in, and flexibility is a huge piece of that for us. So things like recently we had a national audit around our flexible working, and they said that we had a well embedded approach in Western Berkshire. Now what that then will do is that might mean that people will pick Western Berkshire rather than Argyll and Bute, rather than Eastern Berkshire, because the flexibility is there. We're hearing that anecdotally as people are coming in, that we're walking the talk in Western Berkshire, whereas it may have been said in other areas, but when they've tried to access it, they've not got the same open discussion and I suppose desire to try and make things work for people. So anecdotally, we are hearing people, even we have an engagement tool called Trickle, it's like an online chat, and people are saying, I'm reluctant to move because the flexibility that I've established here is second to none, and the thought of losing that. So we are seeing the real benefits of that in terms of the kind of numbers. Our absence is holding up well in the last few years. Our absence levels have reduced. I would like to think a lot of that is around the flexibility that we offer people. Interestingly as well, we've always bucked the trend in terms of turnover, but it shot up ourselves 5 years ago, just after COVID, when some people chose to make some different life choices as a result of that event, and our turnover shot up, and year on year since then, over the last 5 years, we've started to bring our turnover back down again as well, which is encouraging to see that we're keeping people during this difficult time. But I suppose the key is always to look for what is next. We do have a wide and varied workforce. Are we doing enough for our frontline? What would improve things for them? That's also where we see our big vacancies and our constant recruitment piece there. So, which is why we have guaranteed interviews for certain groups as well, to make sure that we're keeping our net as wide as possible, which again is where flexibility comes in. If we're offering flexibility, we might get some people from further afield, but equally we then could maybe access people who would really struggle to get in for certain times. Those with disability, long-term health conditions who need flexibility in their working patterns as well, really extending our talent pools, if you like, as well locally. So for me, it's absolutely key. And there is real benefits to having a real rich workforce that, and the richer and wider our workforce is, the better our policies and approaches will be as we move forward. So real benefits for us in terms of turnover and absence during a difficult time, and a real, I hope, attraction as we get some external I suppose, notice in terms of some of the stuff that we're doing in Western Berkshire, reinforces that it's a solid choice for some people as they're looking to choose where to work.
Thanks, Alison. Now, I know, Alison, we had a chat before this event about how does this conversation come about internally? You obviously are in an HR role, but you've got your recruiting managers in the various different teams. So what happens if a manager comes to you and says, right, I need a new whatever role it is, and you look at the job description and the advert and you see no mention of flexible working in there? What do you do? How do things move forward from there?
So we've actually made that a mandatory piece in the forum around flexibility. So it is around making the recruiting manager stop and actually think about it. So all vacancies come through the HR team. So if someone has ticked, no, this role is not suitable for flexibility, the first thing we'll do is one of the people in Change Partners will have a chat with that recruiting manager to understand why they believe that it's not flexible. 9 times out of 10, that job will change from being being able to offer some degree of flexibility. Now, what we will then do is we will then follow that up with a manager of that area, and we'll maybe do a presentation around the benefits of flexible working, what it brings to the workforce, what it creates, and why we want to be leaders, if you like, in terms of our working flexibly and our approaches to that. So we are constantly looking to have conversations to bust some myths. You know, it's difficult, it's too hard, it doesn't really work for this role. So, you know, we're listening to the managers and we're listening to the employees, and we're trying to make sure that we're the conduit in terms of making that work so that they get the best workforce and the most reliable workforce for their area. So there is an education piece that comes in the back end of that. But the actual process would be, it would come to HR. We've forced managers to think, can this role have flexibility? If they take no, we still go back and have that chat so that we can understand and learn. And then once we've had that chat, and as I say, most of them will go out with that flexibility offering, and then we will follow that up with a wee bit of education around that area.
Okay, thank you. And Martin, perhaps if I can come to you at that point, do you have any recruiting managers that are kind of doubters that you have to enlighten, or what's it like?
Yeah, and I mean, slightly different in it. You know, I said, I think at the, you know, when I started speaking, we have a presumption of agile working. So, and, you know, by definition, also flexible working. So what some managers will try to do, and they are very few, just be clear about that, but they tend to be the more senior and the people who've got the longest kind of service, and, you know, their partners. So interestingly, they are self-employed owners of the business. They're like mini chief executives, and we have 78 of them. So that can be quite an interesting conversation. So sometimes, so what they'll say is, oh, I need somebody in the office 5 days a week. And we're like, we have a presumption of agile. That's not how we operate. Now, the only way that we would derogate from that is as if the business absolutely required it. And so the hurdle is you have to be able to show to one of my team, to one of the HR business partners, why it is an essential business requirement. And of course, in 9.9 cases out of 10, that's not possible to do that, because we've already established that the work can be done on a kind of agile basis, and indeed on a flex basis. We had somebody who was a dual qualified lawyer. That means that they can practice in England and Scotland, so highly prized, had been out, a female, had been out of the workforce for 16 years because she had to care for a child who had special needs, and actually made a direct approach to me through a third party to say, how can I get back into the workplace, a dual qualified lawyer? And I just had a conversation with them and said, what is it that you want to do? And, you know, unsurprisingly, she'd lost her confidence a bit. She was a dual qualified lawyer. She said, I'd like to be a paralegal, and I'd like to work 16 hours a week, and I'd like to work some of that time from home. Now, I can't imagine anything much more flexible than that. And the way I kind of worked on that was, paralegals are also very, very difficult to recruit, rarer than hen's teeth. And, you know, I went to the kind of real estate business, the partner recruiting there, and I said, look, I know you've got a full-time vacancy, but I've got a cracking candidate, because I'd interviewed her, already had a coffee with her, just kind of informally. And whilst I can't comment on her paralegal skills, I could comment on her cultural add to our organisation rather than cultural fit. And, you know, the mindset there was that the partner was saying, so you're asking me to take a punt on someone who hasn't worked in 16 years and wants to work this kind of flexible way set against my full-time vacancy. I said, yeah, I am. I said, because she's a lawyer, so she'll be able to do the job. She just needs a bit of confidence and a bit of coaching for you. Now, 3 months in, that's absolutely going swimmingly. And what will happen is my bet is in about 6 months' time, we'll be talking to her about a kind of solicitor position inside our firm. Really hard to recruit dual qualified people. So there's another advantage around about that. But coming back to your question, yeah, they tend to say they need to be in the office 5 days a week, and we say, so what is the business reason for that? And unless there is a business reason, then a bit like Alison, we're a bit tougher. We kind of overrule that and say, no, that's the basis upon which we operate. This is a deeply cultural thing. You'll need to allow them and agree with them. And we've never had any comeback with that. So we kind of face off those conversations into the business. And again, that's the advantage of the tone from the top and this being a cultural thing. Where is there to go beyond, me as the CPO? You would only go to the chief exec, and the chief exec will say, because he works in that way himself, he works in a kind of agile way. He's saying, but we all signed up to this. That's our approach. We have a presumption of agile, and there is, if you've not made the case, they're all lawyers and know how to make a case. If you've not made the case, then it's agile. What's your problem? And so we have that tends to be the approach we take.
Okay, thanks, Martin. And Nicola, what about you? Obviously, you've got multiple venues, different managers in different venues. How do you decide, or who decides what sort of flexibility is appropriate in each role? And then how do you agree what then goes in a job advert or is mentioned in an interview, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to Alison and Martin in the fact that, first of all, I think from a hiring point of view, there's definitely a huge educational piece. Some of our hiring managers, when we started this journey, certainly had to be convinced about flexibility. Just exactly what Martin would say. I need someone. They can't work on a Saturday, so they are not flexible. They can't work those 3 nights a week, so they are not flexible, and that does not fit into this job that I need. So they fill out, on our workforce plan, that this is the job that I need, and these are the hours, and that goes to our recruiters, and then our business partners, our people business partners, pick that up, and they will always sign off before it goes into actual. To the recruiter to say where put that vacancy up, because it's the people business partners will work with the hiring managers to have those conversations that Martin and Alison are saying, and sometimes it does take some convincing. There is a few that get to me that they can't agree, so it will come to me, but I think over the time with our managers, that the thing that's become easier is that the proof's in the pudding. So, coming out of COVID, our vacancies were sky high. And even last year, we went through a really challenging time, made 18% vacancies. We're now sitting just under kind of 5.5, 5.6%. So I think now our managers can see, that this actually works. And really just making sure that it's not just a paperwork exercise, that down in a bit of paper, that's the person I want. You have to have those conversations to eke out, okay, that's the person you want. It might be, and if it's a skilled person, that skilled person might have been out of work for 3 years, having their family, and wants to get back in, but just doesn't, find the avenues as Martin was saying about the paralegal. So it's those kind of conversations that you eke out. How do we get, and we always go back to who's the right person, forget about, what hours they can do. Are they the right person, and how can we make that work? So yes, sometimes some very challenging conversations, but the process works. And as I say, vacancies down and turnover down when you've got a growing team is obviously, you can put that data in front of people, and it speaks all day long.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I can see we've had a question in. I think that's sort of specifically for Alison. So I'll bring that up in a moment, and then I'll probably just ask you one last question for your sort of, I guess, top tip or top tips for anyone who's on this call who thinks their organisation could make more of flexible working in recruitment, but maybe doesn't quite know where to start or what to do first. So we'll come to that in just a moment. So Alison, we have got a practical question. Do you add a standard flexibility strapline on all your adverts going out via My Job Scotland, or is it down to each individual recruiting manager to add themselves? And they say we're a neighbouring local authority and we're looking at how we can ensure flexibility is highlighted on as many ads as possible, but we're conscious that not all jobs will be open to this. What's your advice?
So we put a fixed one on, but the managers themselves can add some of that information in. So ours is, as I said, it's around, we offer various flexible opportunities to achieve work-life balance, and we give them a link onto a page that gives them everything they're supportive in terms of the flexible work policies. So that's the standard piece, but you will see some managers will mention the flexibility that they have through the vacancy in the role profile itself. But we will have, so it's a bit of both, I suppose, that we're doing, but we make sure we have the standard and we have the link so that they're getting that consistent message, irrespective of what vacancy it is that they're applying for.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And Martin, perhaps if I come to you then, if you're going to give people on this call perhaps one piece of advice, how to make better use of flexible working in recruitment, what would it be?
Well, I would say get data rational about this, because flexible working works. So really understand what the key metrics are in your business and show how flexible working drives and supports what you're there to do. So in that sense, you make flexible working a kind of strategic option for your business that actually drives business outcomes. So get into your data sets and show how that works.
Thank you. Nicola, what's your top tip?
Yeah, I would just say, as I said before, focus first and foremost when you look at that vacancy, who is the right person for that vacancy? Taking out all prejudice, who is the right person, and then decide, okay, how can you fit that? How can you fit that in? Because I think a lot of the decisions come from, we need this, but actually that's not what you need. So yeah, and open your mind a bit. We've had lots of brainstorming, that think about go from it's never a daft idea. And we've really worked, that's where our Love Life form came from, just, put everything down that you think, and then, okay, how could this look? And then channel that through the actual messaging and cultural part, as you see it.
Thanks for that. I love that Love Life form. I think other employers could pinch that and use it. Thank you. And Alison, what about you? Last tip from you. What would you advise?
I suppose what I would be saying to them is, you are really missing out, and you're at really a disadvantage if you're not offering flexibility, and you need to think about the why. Why are you not offering that? What is the reasons behind it? And start to look at how you start to fix that, because until you're offering flexible working, you will be at a disadvantage.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, I think that will conclude our panel. I'll hand back to Alison Manners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And can I take this opportunity to thank Martin, Alison and Nicola for their insights this morning. Some absolutely brilliant examples of how flexibility can be used across three very, very different businesses, but where clearly from what you've shared with us today, I was very struck by Martin, just the emphasis on culture and it being absolutely embedded kind of top to bottom in your culture. Alison, the investment in your local area was a really interesting thing and perhaps something I hadn't thought about before, about that importance of keeping people in your local area and that real focus on, and I think you said 74% from actually within your local area, which was really high. And again, I love that bend and flex term. I thought that was fantastic. And Nicola, I think I've worked in hospitality, so I kind of know it's a really tough market and it's a really tough market to recruit into. And so it's really refreshing to see that be sort of part and parcel of your whole sort of recruitment strategy, and that challenge that is there to managers who perhaps are not quite there yet. So thank you all very much for those fantastic examples and words of wisdom. I mean, just a couple of things from me really about what we would recommend employers or people working in the employability space think about. And we would say be transparent about when you're recruiting, be transparent and be obvious about your flex offering and your flex culture through the whole recruitment process from beginning to end, and make sure that you consider it at every stage. So it's about the planning beforehand. It's thinking about every platform that you're using. Are you showcasing flex through your social platforms, in your adverts, on your website? Amazing how many employers just don't mention about working for the employer on their website, and certainly don't mention flex. So definitely a missed opportunity. And then making sure that you're having those conversations with candidates. That example, Martin, that you gave about that conversation with the paralegal who's now thriving in your organisation, is just a really great example why it's so important to have those conversations before, because it might be people need to speak to you before they apply, but certainly to equip managers so that they are really thinking about and are confident about talking about flexibility. We know from our research as well that a lot of candidates just won't have the confidence to ask about flexibility, as if somehow that's going to be a sort of black mark against their name if they raise the issue of flexibility. So it's so important that employers, when they are recruiting, are proactive and take away that fear for people by actually bringing it up themselves. And if it's been really obvious in all your documentation on all your platforms beforehand, then hopefully people are going to feel much more comfortable and have thought about flexibility, and it and not make assumptions about who might be needing flexibility and who might not be needing flexibility. I think all the three speakers talked about those life journeys and the fact that people need different flexibility at different points in their life, and also not making the assumption that young people somehow don't need flexibility when actually they're very savvy about flexibility now. They're probably very savvy about their legal rights and about their right to request flexibility. So really thinking about those key things as part of your processes. Alana, if you could just share that final slide for us again, please. It's obviously something that we as an organisation are really think is a really, really important factor for businesses. And it's certainly something that we can help organisations if you're looking to enhance or beef up your recruitment processes. We can do light touch audits on job adverts or wider strategic assessment, make recommendations about how you can improve your recruitment processes. And actually the cost of recruitment is huge. We know that the actual obvious cost of recruiting in terms of adverts is expensive, but it's not just that, it's the time that it takes organizations, the manpower that is involved in recruitment. And so if you can keep that retention high and that recruitment low, then you can save that money. But by investing in some expert help at the front end, you may save yourself a lot of money in the long term. So we are certainly available to support any organizations that would like that. Thank you, Alana. And last but not least, we would be very grateful for your feedback on today's webinar. Jenny, my colleague, has just popped, she's already done it, a link to a very, very short survey, and it really is very short survey about today's webinar. If you could take the time to complete that, we would be very, very grateful. It really helps us when we are thinking about future events and webinars that we are able to put on. So again, a final thank you to our panel for your time, taking the time out of today to support this event. We really do appreciate your time, and thank you to my colleague Jenny for pulling this event together, and to Alana, who you can't see, who's in the background, who is our tech support today. So thank you very much to the whole team, and thank you for joining us, and good luck with your recruitment.